Let's start off on a high note. Today we're zeroing in on one of the most unassuming yet surprisingly collectible coins lurking in your pocket change, the 1996 Delaware State Quarter. As the very first release in the U.S. Mint's wildly popular 50 State Quarters program, it quietly opened the door to a hobby that has captivated generations. And some of its early varieties have since become genuine rarities. When the 1996 Delaware Quarter rolled out, it was the first time in over 6 decades that America's circulating quarters actually changed their look. Up until then, the same Washington portrait obverse and eagle reverse had appeared on every quarter since 1932. Designer Frank Gasparo was tapped to translate Delaware's story into a tiny canvas. He chose Caesar Rodney's dramatic 1776 horseback ride to Philadelphia, inscribing First State underneath as a nod to Delaware's entry order into the Union. If you hold an original Philadelphia minted specimen up to the light, you'll spot that clean P mint mark under the motto, and that little letter alone can shift the value of certain era varieties by hundreds of dollars. On its face, a common circulated Delaware quarter is still just 25 cents. But slip into uncirculated territory, think mint state grades like MS 65 and above, and you're stepping into real investor territory. According to Coin Value Checker, a 1996 D Denver Mint quarter in MS 67 condition is trading in the mid-$20 range as of early 2025. That might not sound earth-shaking until you realize how many millions were minted. Well over 100 million each at Philadelphia and Denver. When supply is that vast, even a handful of superb pieces can carve out a small premium. Dig a little deeper, though, and you find the needle in a haystack era coins that have auction houses buzzing. One of the more famous is the double die obverse variety, cataloged as FS 101, where portions of the date and legend appear weekly twice, ghosting just below the intended strike. A PCGS graded MS 68 example of the standard 1996 P Washington quarter, not the state design, but the Philadelphia minted business strike, once fetched $1,998 at a heritage auction back in late 2012. That tells you what can happen when an otherwise everyday quarter gains an unexpected twist. Beyond double dies, collectors scout for missing letter errors, wherein God we trust is faint or absent, and die cracks radiating through the eagle, small axis fractures that look like fine spider webs under magnification. On eBay, you might see a missing God 1996 P Delaware quarter hammered down for $200 plus as a best offer sale, or a dramatic die break spike head error crossing the portrait for a few $100s more. Each of these tells the story of a minting press running through an imperfect cycle, capturing a frozen moment of machine hiccup. History buffs find the 1996 Delaware quarter fascinating not just for its numismatic quirks, but for what that first state release represented, a return to commemorating local heritage in everyday pocket change. Debate still swirls about whether Caesar Rodney's Dusty Ride makes for a compelling design, but there's no arguing that the series fueled a national treasure hunt. Within months, people they didn't even know collected coins. By 1997, lines formed at post offices, dealers scouted rolls of change, and kids pored over coin albums, eyes gleaming at each new edition. Condition remains king in determining value. A well-worn, circulated Delaware quarter will still exchange hands around face value, or at most $1 to $2 among casual collectors. Move up to an uncirculated MS 63, and you could be looking at $5 to $10. Hit MS 65, and mid-teens are possible. MS 66? Call it $20 to $30. Above that, every single grade bump can translate to a significant jump. That's why serious collectors will spend hours hunting mint state rolls, seeking that immaculate strike free of blemishes or contact marks. It's also worth noting that most typing and grading services will slap the MS67 label on hundreds of these quarters each year, which dilutes the scarcity a bit. Hence why Coin Value Checker pegs MS67 value around $22 instead of, say, $200. But step into the truly exceptional error pieces, certified double dies, dramatic die cracks, missing legends, and you're in the rare coin big leagues, with values climbing into the high hundreds or even thousands depending on grade and provenance. Before we flip to the next chapter in our state quarter saga, remember that the 1996 Delaware coin is more than just a 25-cent piece. It kicked off a nationwide collecting phenomenon, represents a pivotal moment in U.S. coinage history, and even today hides a handful of unexpected treasures in rolls and change jars. Keep an eye out for those subtle mistakes. Your next pocket change score could be worth far more than a buck. Now, let's rewind the clock a few decades and talk about a coin that's older, more understated, and often overlooked despite its unique place in U.S. numismatic history. The 1966 Washington quarter doesn't have a flashy state design, and it isn't part of a commemorative series. But what it does have is a fascinating backstory tied to one of the most pivotal shifts in American coinage, the move away from silver. By 1966, the United States Mint was still reeling from the effects of a nationwide coin shortage. Just the year before, Congress had passed the Coinage Act of 1965, which marked the official end of 90% silver dimes, quarters, and half dollars in circulation. That meant the 1966 quarter, like its 1965 and 1967 counterparts, was struck on a copper-nickel-clad planchet rather than the traditional silver alloy. And because the Mint was determined to keep people from hoarding coins during this transitional period, it suspended the use of mint marks from 1965 to 1967. So, unlike most quarters you'll encounter, you won't find a P, D, or S on a 1966 quarter, just Washington's stoic profile and the familiar heraldic eagle on the reverse. That lack of a mint mark has fueled decades of debate and intrigue. While we know the Philadelphia and Denver mints both produced 1966 quarters, there's no way to distinguish them just by looking at the coin. This anonymity adds a layer of mystery, and for collectors, a bit of a challenge. It also makes high-quality specimens from either mint even more important because condition becomes the key variable when no mint distinction is available. So what makes a 1966 quarter valuable? In circulated condition, it's still just worth its face value. Unless, of course, you stumble on one of the rare errors or high-grade survivors. But in uncirculated mint state, especially MS 66 and above, the numbers can start to rise fast. The vast majority of 1966 quarters were struck for circulation, over 821 million of them. That's a staggering number. It means that most examples are heavily worn, with soft details and surface marks. But pristine specimens are few and far between, which is why an MS 67 example can sell for several $100s. There's even a record of a stunning MS 68 specimen being sold for over $3,000. A dramatic leap for a coin most people wouldn't think twice about. Then there are the error coins, always a thrill for seasoned collectors. One of the most desirable errors in the 1966 quarter series is the full brockage. That's when a coin is struck while still stuck against another coin, creating a mirror image on one side and a completely blank or flattened reverse. These errors are extremely rare and almost never found in circulation today. If you come across one, even in lower condition, you're looking at a four-figure valuation. Other errors include off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and coins struck on dime planchets, which result in undersized quarters with missing rim details. These mistakes weren't supposed to leave the mint, but a few did, and collectors are always eager to snatch them up. Even beyond errors, there's the matter of full strike examples. Coins where all the fine details, like the lines in Washington's hair or the feathers on the eagle's wings, are completely and clearly defined. Full strike 1966 quarters are tough to find because the mint was prioritizing speed and volume over precision. Most coins from this era suffer from weak strikes, especially around the edges. So if you find a sharply struck, lustrous 1966 quarter without heavy bag marks or scuffs, that's something to take seriously. Now here's a quirky tidbit that adds some extra spice. Because the mint stopped producing proof sets in 1965 and 1966, they issued something called Special Mint Sets, or SMS. These were intended as a sort of replacement for proofs and included coins with a somewhat higher quality finish than normal circulation strikes. The 1966 SMS quarter is noticeably shinier, with a satin-like surface and fewer marks. But even these coins are not all equal. Some display what's known as a cameo effect, where the raised devices are frosted and the fields are mirror-like. Cameo and deep cameo examples of the 1966 SMS quarter can command impressive premiums, especially in high grades. It's not unusual for a deep cameo MS 68 SMS quarter to fetch over $500, and the market for these coins is still active. So as we wrap up today's journey through three quarters that tell three very different stories, from the modern commemoratives of the 1990s to the transition era mystery of 1966, remember this: even the most ordinary-looking coin can carry extraordinary value. It's all in the details, the history, and the hunt. Keep looking, keep learning, and, as always, check your change. You never know what might be waiting there. Shifting gears from our first state quarter spotlight, let's dive into the 1997 Pennsylvania quarter, which brought us not only the familiar profile of George Washington, but also an elegant tribute to Pennsylvania's Keystone status. This coin was the second release in the 50-state quarters program and landed in pockets nationwide early in 1997. Designer John Flanagan's enduring obverse portrait of Washington remained unchanged from the first issue. But on the reverse, he captured the symbolic Keystone Arch, framed by flowing ribbons bearing the state motto, Virtue, Liberty, Independence. It's a design that feels both dignified and balanced, a fitting nod to Pennsylvania's pivotal role in the nation's founding. From the moment the presses stamped out those first rolls, collectors sensed there was something special brewing. Philadelphia and Denver each struck over 120 million of these coins, making the Pennsylvania quarter plentiful in everyday change. But plentiful doesn't always mean predictable. While most of the output cycles produced well-struck, conventionally graded specimens, a handful of anomalies quietly slipped through the quality control nets. Die cracks, doubling on the motto, and even off-center strikes emerged, giving eagle-eyed enthusiasts a reason to inspect every common quarter with renewed curiosity. In standard circulated grades, you're still looking at about 25 cents to face value, plus a modest bump if you sell as a state quarter collectible. Think $1 to $2 tops among casual dealers. But once you step into uncirculated, the values start to add up. An MS 65 coin often commands between $10 and $15, while MS 67 pieces can trade for $30 or $40 depending on the grader's reputation. In every grade above, that becomes exponentially more sought after. An MS 68 example, with its razor-sharp strike and mirror-like fields, could fetch into the low hundreds when sold at auction. Speak of auctions, and you'll find a handful of headline-busting sales tied to era 1997 P coins. One particularly notorious variety features a prominent die crack running from the letter P through the Keystone Arch, creating a distinctive raised line that looks almost like an abstract river carving through the state symbol. Those have crossed the block for upwards of $500 to $700 in pristine condition. Meanwhile, a small batch of off-center strikes, where the design is shifted by just a few degrees, can command a few $100s even in modest grades, simply because they're eye-catching curiosities that tell the story of a press slightly misaligned. Beyond pure economics, there's a lovely little anecdote tied to the Pennsylvania quarter that numismatic narrators love to share. Early rolls released to the public in Philadelphia included a handful of blanks accidentally struck only on one side, leaving the other side perfectly flat. A few of those one-sided treasures turned up in change machines and local banks, prompting surprise and delight among small-town Pennsylvania spenders. Today, finding one of those is akin to discovering a golden ticket. You'll see anyone who's owned one of those blanks reminiscing about mailing an anonymous note to the mint to say, "Hey, you missed a spot." As with most coins in this series, condition is king. A well-worn, heavily circulated Pennsylvania quarter often shows soft details on the keystone's edges and light scratches swirling across George Washington's hair. In contrast, a mint state example shines with crisp lettering, frosty devices, and no major nicks. Collectors hunting for top-shelf pieces often purchase sealed mint bags straight from the U.S. Mint or tobacco roll wrappers, meticulously inspecting each roll under bright LED lamps. It's this treasure hunt aspect that fuels countless hobby stories. Someone casually rifle throughs a pocket full of quarters, spots a glint of brilliance, and realizes they're holding a coin that could more than pay for a weekend getaway. There's also a subtle but important difference between Philadelphia's P mint mark and Denver's D. Many collectors cling to the notion that one facility's output was tougher on dies, leading to earlier die, crack issues, or slightly different strike depth. Over time, the P mint specimens seem to command a marginally higher premium, especially in air varieties. That tiny letter under Washington's chin isn't just a mint mark. It's a secret code that hints at where the coin was born and, for some, which corks it might possess. As we wrap up our journey through the Keystone States coinage, remember that the 1997 quarter offers far more than face value. It symbolizes a moment when America paused to reflect on its roots, when collectors of all ages discovered new passion, and when a simple design, just an arch and some lettering, could spark worldwide excitement. Keep an eye out for those subtle misfires, because the next remarkable find might be lying unnoticed in your daily roll of quarters. Next up, we'll explore the 1966 Washington quarter's hidden stories and surprising market twists, so stay tuned.